Hello everyone, sorry for the glare on my glasses. I genuinely don't know how else I'm supposed to film videos outside of the weekend or during my lunch break. It's 5:01 p.m. and it is pitch fucking black outside. I fixed the lighting situation. It doesn't look too bad, but it does give me these uncanny whites of my eyes. Give me a second, maybe I can fix this. I'm here today to talk about Daphne du Maurier's beautiful book, Rebecca. To preface this is part of a wider reading challenge that I'm doing where I'm rereading 13 of what I called my favourite books when I was 16 years old. And Rebecca is the 7th book that I've chosen to reread. I originally read Rebecca when I was around 14 or so. I don't have much memory of first reading it, aside from absolutely loving how dark and rich and gothic it was. And I remember when finishing the book, amongst all the plot twists, just thinking, oh, okay, I get it now. I get why everyone talks about Rebecca. I also connected a lot with Rebecca, the book, not the character, at that time because I'd previously struggled reading any classics at that point in my life. I was studying Great Expectations for my English exams at the time, and I didn't feel particularly strongly about any of the other classics that I was either forced to read for school or the ones that I tried in my own spare time. I knew that Rebecca was considered more of a modern classic, and I was just like euphoric that I'd finally found one that I not only could tolerate, but that I actually enjoyed. I was like, this is the key to enjoying classics. I just need to go from the 1930s onwards, and female authors probably. Maybe it'll be a little bit easier to get through now. Now, having grown much older and reading more, I do still struggle with the classics. It's not something that's got easier with time. What I realized instead with Rebecca is that perhaps I'm just a bit of a du Maurier stan. And at that point, I hadn't explored more of her books. I'd say I still haven't explored a huge number of her books, but I've definitely read more. Or other books in the same vein as Rebecca. So I loved du Maurier's humor, her ability to take her time with the settings and the characters, but for me to also not feel absolutely bored to death whilst she took her time. That was a quality to her writing that I hadn't really come across before in the classics that I'd read. It all felt so calculated and like she had complete control over her story rather than, for example, a direct example would be Great Expectations. And as a full final book, it's just so fucking long and boring to me. I cannot get behind the Dickens hype. It's just not for me. When I was around 16, I went and read The Scapegoat, which is somewhere on my bookshelf. I don't know where it's gone. Another Daphne du Maurier book. And I never finished it due to the fact that I associated it with, at the time, I had like a very traumatic wisdom tooth removal surgery and was reading it in hospital. So I never went and finished it, but I went and picked up the same copy that I brought to me with hospital. Where are you? I can't find it. But anyway, I picked up that very same copy last year. I think it was last year or 2023 and had such a great time with it. I was kind of pissed off that I didn't pick it up earlier. So yeah, that's my background with Rebecca and Daphne du Maurier in general, but let's get on to talking about Rebecca itself. I'm not going to go through the plot. It's bloody Rebecca, and I don't know what else I can add in my review that hasn't already been discussed so many times by people who are way better at talking about books than me, but let's go. Rebecca was as haunting and beautiful as the first time I read it. This is such a fun reread and totally worth the second look round when you can then go and really pick out the details and the foreshadowing that she so skillfully peppers throughout the text. From the very first page, you fall into like this lush world that's full of flourishing language, but you're not immediately launched into the main story of Rebecca, but you're kind of held at an arm's length by our unnamed protagonist as she lingers in the current timeline and kind of goes back and forth in this dream of the manor house Manderley. And this rich dream shows the decay and the overgrowth of this manor house since her and her husband, Maxim de Winter, have left. Du Maurier's characterization is always so visceral and feels effortless to me. Something I've always loved from du Maurier is how she weaves her character descriptions, the mannerisms, their quirks, and more so effortlessly into the plot and the dialogue, but it's not in a way that makes you feel like you have to specifically pinpoint or really latch onto the love interest's hair color, for example, or what color their eyes are, or the texture of their voice. It's done so well that it doesn't feel like she's shoving it in your face like, look, you're supposed to fall in love with this character because they have brown wavy hair and chocolate eyes. Like, it's not so obvious. Maxim is portrayed as such like an intriguing dark horse, an attractive figure at the beginning that even I, knowing what happens, was like, oh, Maxim de Winter. I'm so enthralled by him. There's this description that the main character has of Maxim when she first meets him, that she imagines black lace at his throat, that he should be within a painting. Could one but rob him of his English tweeds and put him in black, with lace at his throat and wrists, he would stare down at us in our new world from a long distant past of whispers in the dark, of shimmering rapier blades, of silent, exquisite courtesy. And it's just so visceral and so beautiful that you're there like trapped also in the protagonist's description of the character. You're going straight along with her. You're like, yes, this is a beautiful man. Daphne du Maurier also develops this very natural intrigue without leaving the reader feeling hungry for more, or like she's just dragging along the story for the sake of extending the page count. Her pacing feels very intentional and measured and gives the reader exactly what they need whilst propelling the story and the mystery further. And these smaller details are so satisfying to catch on to during a second read, which is why I knew that I would love rereading Rebecca. Bearing in mind I was also around 14 when I first read Rebecca, there's definitely a lot of smaller things that I did not pick up on when I had no clue what was coming for me, but also potentially just a less developed mind, I wasn't critically analysing all the texts that I was reading. I feel like I'm a bit better at picking out these details and understanding what the author wants to do with their writing. But one of the main things that the book Rebecca is known for is that it has an unnamed protagonist. Rebecca is not about Rebecca. Rebecca is Maxim's late wife. And we never learn what the protagonist's name is because she's always comparing herself to Rebecca. And in my first read, I don't think I really paid much attention to the hints that du Maurier leaves as to what the protagonist's real name could be. But in page 20, there's this mention of Max spelling her name correctly, which she calls an unusual thing. And I never caught this small detail my first time round. And it just got me thinking, like, what kind of name must she have for it to be often misspelt? There's other allusions to this as well when I think Maxim explicitly says, what an unusual name. And it's so in your face, but it wasn't something that I picked up on the first time I read it for some reason. Rebecca, I think, is also very understated and funny in how the first 50 pages is just full of the main character. Her youthful thoughts upon first meeting Maxim is essentially just her letting her imagination completely take hold of her and dramatically visualizing like all of the goodbyes, the arguments, how her future will look, all of these things. But like, she's 21, but she's very much a young 21, a naive, not well explored 21. And she catastrophizes so easily and in a way that's humorous to read and very relatable at times as well if you've ever been someone who's quick to dramatize things. The thing is, I say for the first 50 pages, but this continues throughout the entire book. The main character of Rebecca is just full of what ifs, and then follow-on what ifs and more what ifs, to then find out that the main character has had like the wrong end of the stick the entire time, and all of her what ifs have kind of been in vain. She's completely driven herself around in circles for essentially no reason on a very big misunderstanding or warped understanding of the situation that she has married herself into. Because we find out that Rebecca, Maxim's late wife, is not incessantly loved by Maxim to the point of souring every conversation that she haunts, but she is despised by Maxim. And I love Daphne du Maurier's consistent use of foreshadowing. I don't really ever feel like it feels like too much, especially on the first read when you don't know what's coming to get you at the end, because the intrigue is just so strong. And even on a reread, I feel like she masks the foreshadowing pretty well with the idea that the main character is just failing so hard at filling in Rebecca's massive shoes. What else could it be other than Rebecca is haunting the narrative, that Rebecca is just like so completely amazing and beloved by so many people that there isn't any other option that there could be as to why things are so awkward and why the main character just fails every time to do anything correctly. But this haunting of Rebecca, this kind of looming figure of Rebecca over the main character, is portrayed so well. Like, we get these amazing sentences. There's one like the following, where the main character tears out and burns the first page of a book that Rebecca had previously dedicated to Max. And the sentence goes, "The letter R was the last to go. It twisted in the flame. It curled outwards for a moment, becoming larger than ever." Even as the main character becomes Maxim's wife, in her desperation to recover some type of relationship with Maxim, which she is convinced she is failing at every step of the way, that Maxim is haunted by Rebecca and cannot get over her no matter what she does. To close the gap that she feels both in her age and her social standing, compared not only to Maxim but also to the memory of Rebecca, the main character ends up convincing herself herself that she is happy settling with like these almost incestuous relations to Maxim. And she's convincing herself of this in order to remain in any way, shape or form close to Maxim, to be seen as Maxim's equal. There's many instances of this kind of incestuous nature that I picked up on. I'm not the first one to write about this, and having read a few articles around this and finding out a bit more about Daphne du Maurier's relationship with her father, this makes 10 times more sense. But here are some examples where I was like, what the fuck is going on here? Things that I definitely did not pick up on in my first read. You know I love you more than anything in the world. There has never been anyone but you. You are my father and my brother and my son, all those things. Would we never be together, he a man and I a woman, standing shoulder to shoulder, hand in hand, with no gulf between us? I did not want to be a child. I wanted to be his wife, his mother. I wanted to be old. And then probably the saddest one towards the end, where she really gets the wrong end of the stick right before the big reveal. I don't want you to love me. I won't ask impossible things. I'll be your friend and your companion, a sort of boy. I don't ever want more than that. She's so desperate to be close to him, to remain close to him, and to become his equal that she kind of degrades herself, relates herself to these different familial relationships in a way to maintain that closeness. Another thing I picked up on is that I forgot how funny the main character is. Like, I feel as though the humor was lost on me when I first read this, when I was younger, because I was kind of more focused and enthralled with the unfolding mystery rather than just relishing the text itself. But as part of the main character's development and growth as a character, she has to learn to grow larger than Rebecca's shadow and her memory. And she starts to have like some of these wild, random thoughts that are so fucking funny that just come out of nowhere. One of them that I marked, and it's when the main character meets Maxim's grandmother, and she says, I felt rather exhausted and wondered, rather shocked at my callous thought, why old people were sometimes such a strain. Worse than young children or puppies, because one had to be polite. Not only is there humor in the main character's growth, but also you see kind of these insightful, reflective thoughts where she really just learns to grow more into herself and to become more authoritative and the lady of the house. I think one of my favorite thoughts from the main character is amongst Maxim's explanation of what happened to Rebecca and why he's acted the way he has for the past few months. She, in the middle of this, thinks, it seemed incredible to me now that I had never understood. I wondered how many people there were in the world who suffered and continued to suffer because they could not break out from their own web of shyness and reserve, and in their blindness and folly built up a great distorted wall in front of them that hid the truth. This was what I had done. I had built up false pictures in my mind and sat before them. I had never had the courage to demand the truth. And it feels so satisfying to finally get an acknowledgement from the main character that she has really just sat there and stewed in her fantasies and her thoughts and her what ifs and all of her catastrophizing, just thinking, oh my god, I spent all of this time wasting this time thinking all of this when I could have just gone straight to Maxim and been more authoritative and just said, what the fuck is going on? Why is everyone acting like this? Why do I have to do this? And she could have got the straight answer so much quicker without all of this pain and this kind of self-evaluation that she was doing that didn't bring her any development or growth because she was basing it on an incorrect assumption. She was assuming things to the detriment of herself. There's also humor outside of our main character's thoughts. We have this character, Favell, who I believe is Rebecca's cousin, and it's then revealed that her and Favell were romantically involved. So I suppose first cousin relationships were not really seen as taboo in these days. I don't know what the 1930s was like. He is like an atrocious character. You're definitely not supposed to like him. He's portrayed as sinister from the very moment that he's introduced. There's just these two lines that are absolutely fucking insane from him where I was like, this is hilarious. Right towards the very end when you get the big bombshell that Rebecca actually had cancer and that provides a cover up for why she might have killed herself. They're kind of like leaving the doctor's house in silence, in shock, and Favell just speaks up. Favell began to speak. He did not look at any of us. He kept glancing down at his cigarette and turning it over in his fingers. This cancer business, he said. Does anybody know if it's contagious? No one answered him. That is so fucking funny. Favell earlier, when he reveals that he was romantically involved with Rebecca, also has this amazing line, which is so funny and so disgusting, and if someone said this to me in real life, I'd probably punch them in the face, but it is just hilarious. All married men with lovely wives are jealous, aren't they? I'm a bit of a socialist in my way, you know, and I can't think why fellows can't share their women instead of killing them. My goodness. Especially when you've just got like this villain character monologuing and you just like drop something in there like that. It's just so audacious that you can't help but laugh. Anyway, enough on the humor. To wrap up, I don't really know if I have many succinct thoughts of my reading experience going in and rereading Rebecca, but it is a pretty lengthy gothic exploration of setting, being haunted by the memory of someone so imposing whose reputation that you can never rise to. To be honest, at times I felt its length and I kind of wished it was a little bit shorter. It's like 400 pages, but Daphne du Maurier also has such control over the narrative and the main character's inner voice and inner world that to me it felt worth sticking through for the ending, which I knew was coming. And it's so dense, but so beautifully dense that I still love it. I gave this 4.5 out of 5 stars. Like, I would say this is still a favorite book and that Daphne du Maurier is definitely a favorite author. I think the fact that this is my first Daphne du Maurier book will just always make it feel very important to me, and I can't wait to read this again another decade later. Thank you for watching this very scattered review. I hope you enjoyed it. Here on my channel, I tend to talk about some other gothic books, typically more leaning into the darker horror books, but I also like a lot of literature focused on feminist themes and reading from a wide range of different authors and diversifying my bookshelf. That's the kind of stuff I like to talk about and challenge myself with. I'll leave a link to the playlist where I've talked about the previous books that I've reread. Yeah, I don't know where I'm gonna go from now on. I have a feeling it will likely be Let It Snow, which is the Christmas-themed John Green book co-authored by Lauren Miracle and Maureen Johnson. It feels fitting. I might designate that one to December. Seasonal read. I'll see you in another video. Bye bye.